Okay. Hayom, Chet Iyar, Tafshin Pei, Yom Yerushalayim. זה היום, עשה אדוני, נגילה ונשמחה בו. So I thought to begin, although we usually start right away with the stories, to begin to talk a little about Yerushalayim, Yom Yerushalayim, and from that point to get to the stories that we will tell. You said I have a white shirt. I just got back from performing a wedding at the town of Susia. Susia, it's right next to a town almost 2,000 years old that was fully excavated, and that's where the meal of the Chatona will be. And as doing the wedding, I felt it's the loyalty of the Jewish people to our story, to our destiny, is so moving. For 2,000 years, every Jewish wedding, wherever it's taking place throughout the world, in all these weddings, we always remember Jerusalem. And because for 2,000 years, at every wedding, wherever you go in the world, we'll always say, we will not forget Jerusalem. Because of that faithfulness, the Jewish people have come back to Jerusalem. And I'd like to try to talk about Jerusalem with some stories and some insights about the spiritual significance of Yom Yerushalayim, which in Israel we are celebrating today. There's a story about a long time ago in Europe. Two armies are standing on opposing hills. And suddenly, a scout sees somebody walking in the valley between the two armies. And the general sends a soldier to find out, who is it down there in the valley? The soldier goes down and see this old Jew walking, a bit oblivious that there's a war going on both sides. And the soldier says, where are you going? And the Jew tells him, I'm going to Jerusalem. And it sounds a bit crazy, but he seems so convinced that the soldier goes along with him. They walk up a little hill, and there the old Jew points and says, there is Jerusalem. And the soldier looks and says, I don't see anything. And then the old Jew says, no, you're not looking the right way. Jerusalem, you have to look for with the heart. And this sweet story I see now as a challenge, especially for those who live in Israel, who live in Jerusalem. As there's in the autobiography of Michael Oren, who was the Israeli ambassador to America, he writes that one day his daughter calls up and she's crying. And Michael says, why are you crying? He goes, so she explains she's taking a group of kids from Birthright, and we've just entered Yerushalayim. And so that's why she's crying. But then Michael says, wait, but we live in Jerusalem. Like, what's happening here? Why are you getting so emotional about it? And I think this story captures the challenge that when there's not a physical Jerusalem, we see Jerusalem with the heart. But when we live in the real Jerusalem, sometimes we lose our ability to see that dimension of the beyond in Jerusalem that throughout the ages is what made Jerusalem so important for the Jewish people. So again, this takes us back to that wonderful quote from Marcel Proust, that the challenge of life is not in discovering new lands, but in seeing the old ones with new eyes. So part of our challenge is to awaken and realize the the blessings and the miracles that surround us. Now, I'd like to also share with you what I spoke about at the Yeshivat today, relating to Yom Yerushalayim. Now, in Jewish mysticism, there are two stages of the redemption. The first stage of the redemption is referred to as Mashiach ben Yosef, the Messiah, the son of Joseph. And the second stage is called Mashiach ben David, the Messiah, descendant of David. And Rav Kook explains that the first is national redemption, where the second is universal redemption. So, and Rav Menachem Fruman of blessed memory, he is a Rebbe in Yeshiva, was a great activist to finding true shalom, peace, in Eretz HaKodesh. Here's a picture. He's very photogenic, Rabbi Fruman. And he had a tremendous insight about Yom Yerushalayim. Rabbi Fruman said that Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israeli Independence Day, this is about national redemption. This is connected to the idea of Mashiach ben Yosef. However, so what's Yom Yerushalayim about? Yom Yerushalayim, says Rabbi Fruman, this is about universal redemption. Universal redemption, and this is about Mashiach ben David. The process of nationalism must ultimately unfold to not giving up on the nationalism, but realizing that Jewish nationalism should be, expression is a connection to the universal. In fact, Yerushalayim remains a tremendously powerful center and sacred center for so much of humanity. Now, some might say that this has been giving a tremendous headache to the Jewish people. Life would have been so much easier if nobody other than the Jewish people could care less about what does or doesn't happen in Yerushalayim. I think it would be so much easier. We do whatever we wanted. We'd go up to Har Bayit, to the Temple Mount and pray. We'd build the Beit HaMikdash. It would be so much easier. But I feel even the great tensions that are caused by the connection of so much of the world, whether Islam, whether Christianity, to Jerusalem, creates difficulties, but there's something so meaningful and significant that underlies that. The power of Jerusalem, the power of the temple, the Mikdash, is a sacred center that tries to link humanity. It's not just about the Jewish people. Going back to the very first temple, the first Beit HaMikdash, built by Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo builds it in cooperation with Hiram, the king of Tzor, of Tyre, which is Lebanon. And in the prayer that Shlomo raises up, when the temple is completed, Shlomo prays that God should listen to the voices of the Nachri, of the non-Jews who come from afar. So it's already the first temple which has this purpose of being universal. The second temple also was initiated by Koresh, the king of Persia. And so too, the rebirth of Israel in our times was done in cooperation with much of humanity. The American president who recognized Israel, Harry Truman, said that growing up, he was intrigued by the story of Koresh. And like every boy in America, child in America, dreamt to be the president of the United States. And part of his standing up to his many advisors to nevertheless support the state of Israel is about his self-perception as continuing Koresh. So the idea of the Mikdash, the Beit HaMikdash, coming about in cooperation with humanity, and the Beit HaMikdash that is to serve humanity, be a point of connection. If humanity was apathetic to Jerusalem and the Temple Mount, the journey from being apathy to meaningful connection is much greater than a situation of obsession and even conflict and animosity, of reframing it for a way of connection. And ultimately, the destiny of Jerusalem and Yerushalayim and the Temple Mount, it's about connection. It's about a way of bringing humanity together. It's overcoming the conflicts. So I'd like to share some stories to that effect. For years, there was an event in Jerusalem, a yearly event called the Jerusalem Hug, and Jews and Muslims and Christians would come together, forming an enormous human chain to hug the walls of Jerusalem to say, we want Jerusalem to connect us and not to divide it. And one year, it was shortly after Rabbi Fruman passed away, a close friend of mine, who was one of Rabbi Fruman's dearest friends, we saw each other for the first time since Rabbi Fruman passed away. We came, we hugged each other, and that picture, which I'll show you, became one of the most famous pictures of that year. And Google, every year, Google at the end of the year as a 1-minute film called The Year in Search. And the one picture from the Middle East was the picture of the hug at the Jerusalem Hug. And the title was Looking to Make Sense. So I'd like to share with you this picture. So please give me a minute. I'm going to try to, I'll try to take it down. Let's see, here is, let's see, where is, okay, just give me a minute to download it. Okay, we'll share screen. Okay. So 2014 was a very difficult year in the Middle East, and somehow this picture is from Jerusalem. An authentic Jerusalem hug was something that powerfully echoed throughout the world. Another Jerusalem connection. This is more recently in 2018. There's a beautiful Israeli innovation called Kululam. Kululam is this was something developed that you could take 1,000 people together. You divide them based on the type of voice they have, and in about an hour, you're able to get them all singing together in harmony, and each group, based on their voice, has their parts. Now, the largest Muslim country in the world is Indonesia. And in there's a group of, the largest group there of 60 million Muslims. Their leader saw a interfaith kululam in Israel and said that if they would make another kululam of Jews, Muslims, and Christians together, he would come to Jerusalem. So in the Tower of David, in the old city of Jerusalem, one night we had 800 people came together. I was privileged to represent the Jewish people together with this Muslim leader from Indonesia, and we and together in 3 languages we did a kululam on Bob Marley's One Love. Okay, so here I have a Maybe I'll share one picture. 1 second. No, not this one. Let's see. Oh. Okay, so I'm gonna we stop share and
I can sing it, Yaakov. One love, all stick together. One love.
So if you want to, if you look in the internet afterwards, look for Kululam, one love, and you'll have in the city of David hundreds of us singing together. So the hope of Jerusalem that has so much of the book of Tehillim talks about shalom and Jerusalem, is Jerusalem to be a place of shalom and connection. In fact, let me share with you a insight that came about from one of my interfaith study groups. One of the rabbis was reading Solomon's prayer, and in Solomon's prayer, at the dedication of the temple, Solomon prays, God, listen to the prayers of the Nachri, of the non-Jews who come mirachok, who come from far. And then my dear friend, Sheikh Khalid Abu Awad, is deeply moved and says, this is incredible, because the entire connection of Islam to the Temple Mount is because of the 17th surah of the Quran. And in that surah, it says that Allah takes Muhammad to Al-Aqsa, and Misgad Al-Aqsa is Aqsa is far, the far away mosque. So we have an intertextual connection. Shlomo saying, listen to the non-Jew who comes from far, and the Quran saying to Muhammad, go far to the Misgad, the faraway Misgad. So to see that, on one hand, Jews should see it as a blessing that so much of humanity feel connected to the Temple Mount, which the book of Isaiah designates it to be a Beit Tfilah Lekol Amim, a house of prayer for all people. And on the other hand, those who are connected, certainly Islam, which we have now the strongest conflict with, should realize that their connection, which should be embraced by the Jewish people, but that the source of that connection is because this is the site of the sacred site of the temple. In fact, in early Islam, this was known. In the Umayyad dynasty, they were the coins of the Umayyad dynasty. You'll see I'll show you the coins. They're written in Arabic, but it's a picture of the menorah of the Beit HaMikdash, because then it was before the politics got involved. It was clear that Har HaBayit is important. Why? Because this is the spot of the Beit. Its important lies in the fact that this is the place of the Mikdash. So let me show you these coins here. Okay, so you can see the coins over here. You see, of course, the pictures of the menorah. And on the back and front side, you see the writings are in Arabic. These are coins from the 7th and 8th century, the Umayyad Khalif. Okay. Now, okay, I see my son wants to come, so my shy son wants to come to see. So, okay, so he'll have to see this later. Okay, so this is about a vision of Jerusalem. And I feel this is the way that the Jewish people should be taking. Not sometimes on the right or on the left, they take things to an extreme. Sometimes Jews could feel this creates such Jerusalem and the Temple Mount, it creates such problems for us. Let us try to just ignore it and deny its significance. That would bring to one extreme, where the other extreme would be to see the connecting Jerusalem and the Temple Mount as something which is purely nationalistic. But I think the third path is a path to talk about the sanctity of Jerusalem, but in a way which tries to see its power as being a place of connection, a connection of all of humanity, and find a way that all feel that this is a place that we could connect in our connection to the divine. Okay, so this is our hope for Jerusalem. And I'd like to continue, since we started with talking about Jerusalem, some of issues about encounters of the Jewish people and other nations, to add some other stories of encounters. So maybe I'll share with you one of my favorite stories of all time, which the hero of the story is a Muslim soldier in the Israeli army. Several years ago, it was Rosh Hashanah, and there was a heat wave in Israel, and this was a 3-day holiday because Rosh Hashanah is 2 days, but it was next to Shabbat. 3 days they were not allowed to turn on electricity, and our house has many guests, and at the very beginning of the Chag, of the holiday, the electricity falls. Now, when I would live in Manhattan, we could politely ask our non-Jewish neighbors to help us turn the electricity on. But in Otniel, if the power goes, you don't have the proverbial Goy Shel Shabbat, the Shabbos Goy, to come and turn on the electricity again. So, but someone tells me that at the nearby army base, there's some non-Jewish soldiers. So I feel very embarrassed because I feel the non-Jews, especially Arabs, Muslim Arabs in Israel, are not obligated to serve in the Israeli army. So when they do, they're volunteering. So I think a person volunteers to serve in the Israeli army. He comes out to protect us. I'm going to come, and because some sort of a law, which is kind of hard to explain, about not turning on electricity on holidays, to ask him to come to my house, which is one of the houses furthest from the army base. So I go down to the base, and at first they can't find it's a Muslim Bedouin soldier, and I'm so relieved that they can't find this guy. But finally they find him, and he said, and his commander, his Jewish commander, says, "Okay, I'll give you a ride back to the house so you could turn on the electricity." Then I think, oh no, I'm worrying about turning on electricity, to get a ride in the car to go back, turn on electricity. This isn't going to be very halachic. So I say, no, I'm going to manage it. Thank you anyway. And I try to run away. But then the commander says, okay, so walk him there. When you're finished, call me and I'll pick you up. And then I'm going to say, no, I'll manage. Don't want to trouble you. And I try to go away. But then this Bedouin Muslim soldier says, I understand. I'll walk with you the whole way to your house, and then I'm going to walk back. So the soldier starts walking me back. And on the way, he seems very warm and smiley. He comes to the house, and he turns on the electricity. And we say, "You want to stay, eat something?" He says, "No, my free time is up. I have to go back to the base." So I figure, of course, I'm going to escort him back. I mean, I'm not going to say that he helped us and go back alone. So I start escorting him back to the base. And then he turns to me and says, you have very cute kids. Okay? And some of you know my kids, right? Gershon, do I have very cute kids? Yes. Okay, so we know this is an objective reality. Okay, now, And so I tell him, I bless you. You should also have cute kids. And then suddenly his face fills with sadness. And he says, I'm never going to get married and I'm never going to have children. And I say, what happened? Why not? Then he tells me a story that he was in love with a local Bedouin girl, but before they got married, she had some sort of a blood disease, and she passed away. Now, and he said, after this, I can't imagine ever loving anybody and getting married again. And then I said, you know what? Maybe God sent you to us for a reason, because years ago, one of my students was killed in a terrorist attack, and his widow, again, went through a very long and painful period. But ultimately, she realized that the right thing is to return to life, to choose life. And she began a journey, and she finally found a new love. And she had just got remarried. And she and her husband are our guests for Rosh Hashanah. You came and you brought the light by turning on the electricity. You brought the light back into our lives. But maybe this is because you have to learn something and bring the light back into your life. And then we sat there talking all about life and death and love. And at some point, he went his way and I went back. And when I came back, I thought this is so symbolic, because what does it mean when the electricity, the switch falls down? What does it mean to put back the electricity? Electricity to flow, it needs a closed circuit. If you close the circuit, then the electricity flows. And the closing of the circuit is what happened here. We have a story about my trying to keep Rosh Hashanah, about a young widow who gets remarried, about a Muslim soldier, and somehow all of these life stories are interconnected. We're closing the electricity that connects us all together. And I actually wrote this up as a story and I published it. And for me, this was a very sweet story. But some people would tell me, you know, it's all in your head. What does that mean? Meaning everything happened exactly the way that I'm telling it. However, I'm deeply moved about this interpersonal connection between all these different people. But maybe it's only in my mind that these connections are being made. Maybe the soldier, as far as he's concerned, bad enough he walked me so far to my house that he had to spend another half hour till he freed himself of my ranting and chatting away. So I didn't know, is it all in my mind, or did something really happen? But a few years later, I think it was 4 years later, I got the answer. I'm sitting in the dining room in the yeshiva in Otniel, and my phone goes off. And I say, who is it? And the person says, this is Mohammed. And I have no idea I still don't know who this is. And he says, I've been searching for you for so long. And you should know that every day for 4 years, I read the letter that you sent me. And only then I remembered that, in fact, he had, after that holiday, I wrote a letter of gratitude in which I also had part of our conversation. And I gave it to a soldier, said, please bring this to the Bedouin soldier. So he tells me 4 years, every day, I've been reading that letter. And I want to tell you that I've now gotten engaged, and I want you to come to the wedding. So I was deeply moved. The wedding was all the way up north in in the Galilee, and I make it to the wedding. And I think, what am I going to do at a Bedouin Muslim wedding? So I figure I'll be there 5 minutes. I'll say Mazel Tov and start heading back. I come there. They sit me down on the table. They give me this, hello, Gila. You're getting to the best part, the happy ending. So I'm making it to this Muslim wedding up north. They sit me down. They give me this big piece of sheep and a big bowl of milk. And I see that everyone's dipping the sheep into the milk. And I only eat glatt kosher, so I really couldn't eat too much over there. But then I see that they're starting to dance. And usually I'm very shy about dancing because I'm very clumsy. But I think to myself, nobody's going to, you know, this is an Arab wedding. Nobody's going to see me dancing. So what do I have to lose? So I start dancing. Now, at Jewish weddings, somehow, when I try to dance, I always find myself being pushed. There's like some centrifuge that pushes us out. Like you try to get to the center of the circle and you get pushed out. But here was the opposite. After a few minutes, I was ready to leave, but I kept getting pushed back in. Now, one thing that happened there is I didn't have a bobby pin for my kippah. So the whole time I'm dancing, I'm going like this all the time for my kippah not to fly away. And the Arabs there, they thought it was cute, so they would also do this the whole time. Finally, I convinced them I really got to leave because I have a long trip. So they let me go. I gave mazal tov to the chatan and kala and blessed them that they too should have cute kids. And this time they accepted the blessing. And I thought, this is the end of the story. But real stories always come in installments. And a few days later, the director of the yeshiva in Otniel says to me, you know, you danced nicely at the wedding. I say, what wedding? He goes, the Arab wedding. I go, how do you know? He says, well, apparently somebody filmed me in my dance trying to keep my kippah from flying away. And they thought they looked kind of cute. So it became viral in the Arab world. And at some conference that he was out, some Arab students came and said, you want to see something cute? And they showed the film of me dancing. And somehow it was really went around Israel. And even for a while after that, people would stop me in the street and say, are you the dancing rabbi? Anyway, so as clumsy as I am, I managed to make it to fame because of my my dancing abilities or misabilities. And here I'll show you from YouTube a few seconds of the dance. Let me see if I could find it. Okay, so let me once. Okay. Okay. Okay, so anyway, this is the... okay, anyway, so my fame as...
It's brilliant. It's not clumsy at all.
Not at
it's
all.
Really,
thank you for your good eye.
Very nice. Very nice.
I think that when I'm self-conscious, I'm very clumsy. There, I said, no one's going to see me anyway, so I don't have to be self-conscious. Okay, let me try to close whatever is making the noise over here. Okay, sorry about this. Okay, so let me try somehow to close. Okay, so back we are. Okay, so since we did a couple of, we started already with some interfaith connection stories, talking about Jerusalem connecting. So let me, just like we're celebrating the reunification of Jerusalem, this is also the freedom of Hebron. So let me share another interfaith connecting story with Hebron, and that will call it for today. In Hebron, the oldest still standing building in Israel, which has the same purpose that it began, is the Menorah Machpelah, the tomb of the patriarchs, where, according to Jewish tradition, the patriarchs and the matriarchs are buried. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Sarah, Rivka, and Leah. Now, and also some say Adam and Eve. Now, one day my wife is on a Friday afternoon in the Menorah Machpelah, and she finds herself totally alone. Like everybody must have been out cooking. So my wife said, Michal says, wow, this is an incredible opportunity to be alone with the holy fathers and mothers and to pray with them. She begins praying, and suddenly the muazzin goes off. The muazzin is the call to prayer on the minaret on the Arab mosques. And part of the Menorah Machpelah is the Mosque of Abraham. Now it's very, very loud, and Michal realizes she can't continue because it's interrupting her prayer. But then she thinks, it says, if you can't beat them, join them. If we believe that it's the same one God we're praying to, let's connect up in prayer to the one. And instead of resisting by connecting, she was able to see what a beautiful voice it really was. So she comes back on a Friday and asked me if I think, is it really a person singing, or is it some sort of a tape recording? So that Sunday, I went to a meeting that there's a group of in which the leadership of the Jewish settlers in Hebron, including their spokesperson Noam Arnon, meet on a regular basis with Muslim leaders in Hebron. And I asked Sheikh Ahmed Abu Snena, I tell him about my wife. I say, the person in the muazzin, is it a person or is the recording? He goes, recording? Of course not. It's a relative of mine, and I will send your regards to show how close things could be. But as we learned, all real stories have continuation. A few weeks later, I'm at another interfaith study group in Beit Jala, which is a suburb of Bethlehem. And then I see again some new Arab participant comes, and I ask everybody, I see everyone's really excited to see him. I say, who is this guy? And they say, wow, he's from Al-Khalil, which means Hebron, meaning the friend. In fact, in Hebrew, Hebron comes from the word chaver, which means friends. And the Arabic name is Al-Khalil, which means the friend, referring to Abraham, friend of God. And he said he comes from Al-Khalil, and he has a beautiful voice. So right away I say, tell me, are you the muazzin of the Menorah Machpelah, of the Mizgad by the Menorah Machpelah? And he looks at me in shock. How did you know? And sure enough, it was him. But the full closure of this story takes place about a year later. In Afghanistan, there's a tribe, the Pashtuns, which become somewhat infamous because the Taliban come from the Pashtun tribe. But they have ancient traditions, you can look it up in Wikipedia, that they are descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel. So a group of Pashtuns, these are actually not a group who actually came from India on the other side of the border, not from Afghanistan itself. Decided they're Muslim, but they're very proud that they believe that they are descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel. So they came to do a roots tour to Israel, and they're looking for somebody to take them to the Menorah Machpelah. So somehow they got to me, and I said, of course, I'm going to take you. Now, officially, in the Menorah Machpelah, there are two sides to it. That one side is the Islamic side, open for Muslims, the other open for Jews, and we're supposed to not mix. Now, so I get to the Jewish part, and there's the soldier there looks at all these Pushtans and asks me, what, are they Jewish? And I figured the best defense is offense. So I say, are they Jewish? These are the descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel. And it was so dramatic that he let us all through. Now, we get inside, and we get to the place which is designated as the grave of Abraham. And they're very deeply moved. And at that point, my grandmother, who was then 94 and sick, was very sick. And I said, can you please give a prayer for my grandmother? So I thought they'd say just a few words, but all the Pushtan, they're there praying away for several minutes, really taking their task seriously. But they finished praying, and then suddenly the Muazzin goes off on the Mosque of Abraham. Now, these Pushtanims are really Muslim, and they want to pray right there. But there's a problem. Because to pray, they have to wash their hands. I find some faucet, but also they have to be on some sort of a carpet. So I'm running to find something for them. So I think this Chabad Chassid, who's there to help people put on tefillin, but I see that this big towel next to him. I say, can I borrow the towel? And he said, of course, but what do you need the towel for? So I said, between me and you, these guys are Muslims and they want to pray right now. He goes, a towel? Let me bring you the carpet that the Kohanim use, that they stand on when they're without their shoes, to give the prayers of the Kohanim given every morning. So there, as he spoke about Jerusalem as connection, here about Hebron, a place of Hebron from Chaver, friend, or Chibur, connection, seeing that part of the destiny and the meaning of Yom Yerushalayim and also Yom Hebron is to see this unfolding of Jewish destiny. Ultimately, it's about the nationalism, but it's also about the universalism. It's about finding our ways to deeply connect. And maybe I'll end with what the great Italian rabbi Elijah Ben Mosaic said in the 19th century, that the mission of Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, it says, to bringing back Veheshiv Lev Avot al Banim, Velev Banim al Vatam, to connecting the fathers and the children and the sons together. And he says this can be seen as the connection between Am Yisrael and Judaism, which represents the fathers, and those traditions that developed ultimately out of Judaism, that to find some way in the future to find a way to reconnect. And this is a vision of uniting humanity and the world, through God, to fulfill that verse said in the chapter that talks about all of humanity on the holiday of Sukkot coming to Jerusalem, has the verse Bayom Ahu Yeh Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. On that day, God and His name will be one. So, okay, Sof Davar Hakol Nishma Et Elohim Yirah Ve'et Mitzvotav Shmor Ki Zeh Kol Hadam